The second week of the month always used to be just the jam-packed, crazy, huge week, but it's kind of tapered off. They've sort of spread the titles out. It's a little bit more even every week, which has been great for me, who's reading and reviewing every book that comes out. The only title that I did not pick up today was the Tim Drake DC Pride Month book. Couple reasons for that. First reason is I leafed through it and discovered that all of it was reprinted from previous issues of Batman Urban Legends that featured Tim Drake. Even despite that, I was still kind of on the fence about picking that book up just because it feels kind of weird highlighting Tim Drake as a gay character when they only just retconned him to be gay in the last 12 months. I'd be a little bit more compelled to pick something like that up if it was, you know, Batwoman or someone like that who's always been gay from the get-go in concept. This title just sort of felt like editorial patting themselves on the back for making Tim Drake gay. It's just something about it just feels off. And I don't have a problem that they made Tim Drake gay. Like, I actually think that kind of fits the character. It doesn't feel earned yet, so I skipped it, long story short. That left me with, I think, 4 titles that I picked up, only 2 of which are actually getting a review for you guys today. Kicking things off, we have the non-continuity ? Title of Future State Gotham, alternate timeline situation here. This title features the return of Bruce Wayne, which has got me pretty excited. I really need to circle back and read that second arc. I read the first arc, really enjoyed it, and then I kind of took a break. But now that we've got Bruce Wayne in the mix, I'm pretty excited to circle back and get caught up on what's been going on in the Future State universe. The other title that is in continuity, but isn't getting a review today, is Batman Urban Legends number 16. This features the wrap-up of a whole bunch of different storylines that have been going on. For those of you guys who missed my last couple of episodes featuring Batman Urban Legends, you know that I've decided to just kind of stop reviewing this because it just takes a lot of time and people aren't that interested in it. But I will be reviewing kind of when new titles launch. So 17, I'll probably do a full review on, because with 16 we have Batman and Zatanna, part 6 of 6. We've got Birds of Prey in Memory Lane, part 3 of 3, that featured Miracle Molly, which was nice to see her back. Ace the Bat Hound in Hounded, part 6 of 6, which has been sort of the highlight title that's kind of kept me going through the last 6 issues of this series. And then the only news story we got was Batman and Alfred Pennyworth in Some Things Remain, which I actually already leafed through. It features Josh Trujillo on writing duties and Rosie Kemp on art duties, and it was kind of an interesting little story. Basically, Alfred Pennyworth is admitted into an old folks' home where a bunch of murders have been taking place, or I should say deaths under mysterious circumstances. Ventriloquist is there, which I love. Ventriloquist and Scarface. Those two characters just never get enough play, in my opinion. They've just kind of been overshadowed for a long time in the DC universe, so it's nice to see them get a little bit of play here. It was actually one of those stories where after leaping through it, it felt like, gosh, this could have actually been like a 2-part story in the main Batman title if that wasn't so obsessed with these big events and these big launches and these big creators, and it was just kind of trucking along like a normal book used to do back in the day. This probably would have been a decent little 2-parter, but as it stands, you know, you got 8 or 10 pages and then it's over, so they did what they could with the amount of paper they had. So if you haven't been reading this title, this certainly isn't the one to hop on with, but we'll see next month with issue 17 when they launch a whole new slew of multi-part stories, if this title is worth circling back around to. Alright, the next book, which I will be reviewing for you guys, is Batgirls. We're up to issue number 7. New artist on this, Robbie Rodriguez. I assume they're just filling in, but I guess I'm not sure. Also, new storyline. We wrapped up the sort of convoluted mess of a story they had going before that was Simon Saint's apostles or whatever they are. It had the seer floating around. It had all kinds of different stuff jammed into one storyline. I can't remember the name of the main villain that kind of came out of that, but we've wrapped up his deal. And so last month we were left with a cliffhanger in which Seer was going to the Batgirls for help. So kind of curious to see where things go with issue 7. Hopefully a chance at a clean slate. Leafing through it, looks like this is only going to be a 2-part story. Alright, and then the final title I picked up this week is I Am Batman number 10, which this is the conclusion of the I Am Batman Coming to New York storyline. A lot of different moving parts in this one. It's been hit and miss, so I'm curious to see how this one wraps up before we get into the next story arc. I'm not sure if he's staying in New York or if he's going back to Gotham or what. Hopefully staying in New York, because there's definitely some seeds planted throughout the course of this arc that I would like to see developed. Alright, so I'm going to get to reading the two main continuity books that I'm going to be reviewing for you guys today. Batgirls and I Am Batman, and I'll be right back with my thoughts once I figured out what happened this week in Batman. Alright, so I've had the opportunity to sit down, read through my Batman books, and even though there's only 2 titles, I did order these least favorite to most favorite. There was basically a clear winner of which one I liked more, and kind of an interesting week. So the second week of the month is sort of like dumpster week for me, in which these are the titles that are typically the ones that I'm least excited for and mainly buy and review to tell you guys what happened with Batman for the week. If I didn't have this YouTube channel, I didn't have this crazy weekly mission that I'm undertaking, I wouldn't be picking these up in all transparency. But it's been interesting because, you know, sometimes books pay off in ways that you don't expect. And this was a week where both titles actually, I thought, were pretty well served. So kicking things off, the runner-up to pick of the week of the 2 that I got, this book was my number 1 loser, if you will, is Batgirls number 7. And I just gotta say, like, this is one of those books, I just wish there was a different artist on it. Because whenever there's a fill-in artist, it just seems like it reads completely differently to me. And I don't know if I'm just a cranky old man that, you know, likes my classic comic book style. This certainly is a stylized, cartoony take on the Batgirl team. But just the fact that they actually, you know, have anatomy at all genuinely makes a big difference and adds to my enjoyment of this title quite a bit. On top of it, we're launching a new storyline in which we're sort of starting to find out a little bit about the backstory of the Seer and what she's kind of all about. It turns out her family worked for the Penguin. It kind of gave me Monkey Prince vibes, except of course Monkey Prince's parents were sort of good people at heart, whereas the Seer's parents were just sort of typical crime goons or whatever. And so when they kind of all went to jail, she was just kind of left as an orphan and has turned into the Seer as a result of that. Not a bad idea for that character. It's nice to kind of get some resolution to, you know, where this character came from and what she's all about. I'm hoping we get more of that in the second part of this story, because at the beginning of this book, she's basically kidnapped, taken to the Iceberg Lounge, and it's the Batgirls kind of having to team up and bring her back from the clutches of the Penguin and the Saints. I keep calling them the Apostles, but that's not what they are, but these Simon Saint wannabe magistrate people, whatever they are. My chief complaint about this book is it didn't feel like it totally followed through on the promise of the end of the last issue, because at the end of the last issue, you know, she's going to the Batgirls for help, and it would have been nice to see her playing off against the various Batgirl characters more. Instead, it feels like we kind of skipped past that issue to kind of get back to the action, and now they're sort of already on this rescue mission to go get her. So it would have been nice to see that relationship and the tension between those 4 characters kind of built up a little bit more before we got to this story. But that said, within the context of the story itself, I think it actually largely worked. And this issue, more than others for some reason, I felt the idea of a team of Batgirls working together, each with their sort of own role on the team being executed on a mission, more so than I have in the first 6 issues of this title. A lot of times this book sort of divides and conquers. You have, you know, the original Batgirl, aka Oracle, just kind of calling the shots in the background. And then Cassandra Cain and Spoiler are basically just kind of a mess, just kind of throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. All of their successes feel very accidental. Whereas in this, it's like each of them has a significant role to play. There's a plan, and they're like executing that plan. And so I think from a writing standpoint, Batgirl 7 was a step up from what we had in the first 6 issues. Of course, it helps, again, that with the first 6 issues, like, I couldn't even tell you what the plot of that was. Like, I could tell you a lot of different elements, but it never really gelled into one cohesive story. Whereas in this, The Seer has been kidnapped by the magistrate, and the Batgirls feel like they need to rescue her despite prior differences, and so they have to break into the Iceberg Lounge. They have to figure out a way to do it without having to fight all the various crime families of Gotham and rescue Seer for their own purposes. So pretty cut and dry, pretty straightforward. I like the direction this book is going. Let's keep this filler artist and just ditch the other artist. Please, 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 please. I'm done with that horrible cartoony artwork of the first 6 issues. And even though this fill-in artist is like super generic, it really does improve the storytelling that Becky Cloonan is going for here. All right, so then that just leaves my pick of the week, which is genuinely a pick of the week. Like, I actually really found myself enjoying I Am Batman number 10. This is the conclusion of the Empire State of Mind storyline, which has largely been hit and miss. Like, it does have a cohesive villain, which is the Man Ray character who you see on the cover. He's like a sadistic torturer who is exposing corruption in New York. It all feels very much like the Riddler in the Batman from the movie. Here he is right here. His weapon of choice is an iron with spikes on it. Definitely a weak villain, although, you know, okay concept, but like the actual design of the villain and like his shtick, it doesn't work. That's probably the biggest problem with this storyline. Like, he needed to come up with a villain that was a little bit more compelling than this. But what this book has and pays off from the last 4 issues of this series is the various different dynamics of, you know, a mayor who is jumping in at the shadows, is afraid his corruption is going to be exposed, but is also an essential ally to the Batman of New York. There is tension within the police department and this new Batman and how they're interacting. There is a detective that's on Batman's side who then also is in conflict with her fellow police officers, and everything really comes to a head in a pretty interesting way here. So Man Ray shows up, attacks the mayor, and Batman is there to stand in his way. And so you have this pretty exciting climax in which he fights Man Ray. There's a whole throwdown on the steps of City Hall. It actually feels pretty epic. And then what really got this book over the top, and warning, I'm going to spoil it because honestly, I know most of you guys aren't reading this. So if you are reading it, hold off. Don't watch the end of this because you will be spoiled for the ending of this title. But basically what happens is everything comes to a head. You've got Batman, the detective that's on his side, and the police department, and the mayor, and Man Ray. And they're all facing off, tensions are high, and the police department are over this Man Ray guy. He's someone that's, you know, been killing members of their own team. And so he is about to execute Man Ray in the street, and then the detective that's been on Batman's side the whole time shoots the police officer and basically allies herself with Batman, and then also sort of in a sick way Man Ray as well, and then that's where the title leaves off. And so basically this powder keg explodes in everyone's face, and now I honestly can't wait to read what happens in issue 11. And so really a lot of good drama in this issue. It was pretty cool to see how all the different story elements of I Am Batman from the last 4 issues came to a head and actually had a very strong payoff. So my props to John Ridley on this. I think that a lot of the seeds he's been planting over the last few issues, while it was off to a rocky start, had some ups, had some downs, he's proved that he has a direction for this book. So the question is, where is he going to go from here? And I'm very excited to find out. I'll let you guys know next month if it was all a giant waste of time or if we're really continuing down a fairly interesting track here. And so that said, I am out. That is everything that happened this week in Batman. Are you picking up Urban Legends? Do you wish I had done a full review on this? This is the first week where they've actually had cover A. This is the first week in a couple weeks where they've actually had cover A for me to pick up on.